Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar hosted by the Greenwich Hospital Medical Library. This is part of a series that I like to call Where to Find, and tonight's topic is on Alzheimer's disease resources, specifically online Alzheimer's disease resources. My name is Veronica Belenkin, and I am the Consumer Health Librarian at Greenwich Hospital. For those who may not know me or what a consumer health librarian does, I basically help Greenwich community members and its surrounding community members find and understand health information. This can be in the in print form, such as books, brochures, pamphlets, or online through the internet. And in doing so, I hope to help them and you help make better healthcare decisions. And as many know, or should know, November is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, as well as National Family Caregivers Month, which is why I initially wanted to do this topic. But even more so this year, it's more important to bring attention to those conditions that have been almost eclipsed by all the media and public attention on COVID-19. And while it is understandable that COVID-19 has occupied the news and our mental spaces, it unfortunately takes attention away from these kind of conditions such as Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's has certainly not gone away for those who already have it or whose family members and caregivers are struggling through, because COVID-19 has only made things more difficult for those patients and their caregivers to find adequate care and support services, since the elderly population is more at risk for the virus. They're forced to stay home, and a lot of the access to services have been limited because they are transitioning online, and because Alzheimer's disease is an affliction primarily on the elderly, they might have not the access or the knowledge to access those services online. And it's really not the same as being with a group in person. I've been to support groups, and I've been to support groups in person and online, and it's just such a big difference. So it's a very tough time for those with Alzheimer's. So that's primarily the reason why I wanted to do this, especially this year. So I'm hoping that some of these resources that you find tonight are helpful. And I will be linking my contact as well as my website so that you can do some research on your own as well. Before I begin all of my webinars, I like to start with a disclaimer that this presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. I'm a certified librarian with a master's degree, but I'm not clinically able to diagnose any conditions or such. So that's why I always reinforce that you always consult your doctor or the healthcare provider for medical advice before making any lifestyle decisions that may impact your health, especially when it comes to Alzheimer's. And I will be going over a lot of organizations and recommending a lot of websites, but no sponsored content will be featured during this presentation. Get ready for an information dump. So there are quite a few topics that I would like to cover tonight. In the interest of time, I want to limit this to an hour, but if we need to go over an hour, I'm happy to. So we're going to go over websites that for general Alzheimer's disease information, how to find resources for legal, medical, and financial resources, caregiver support resources, home care and hospice resources, specific resources for the state of Connecticut, and COVID-19 and Alzheimer's resources. And I just want to emphasize that this is just where to find. So these are just going to be primarily about websites and the organization websites that you should look into. Because of time, I'm only going to go over briefly these websites or certain aspects or features that I think are helpful on these websites. For a more in-depth look into them, you can schedule an appointment with me. That'll be went over in the end of the presentation. And then you can definitely look into these websites on your own as well. So This is a great video from the Alzheimer's Association, which is a website we'll be talking about a lot tonight. But they have this really good video on disease figures and stats for 2020. So it's only a minute long, so we're just going to quickly watch it together. So that was just a nice summary of the exact numbers associated with Alzheimer's in the United States. Sixth leading cause of death. I don't think many people know that it's that high up on the list. This is a great video to share if you lead a community group or you are in contact with Alzheimer's organizations in the area. It's a great thing to share and just to raise awareness of how much of a problem it's becoming. And if you can look at the disease stats for Connecticut itself, I'll just quickly bring that up here. Specifically for Connecticut, it projects that these are the totals for in the next 5 years of how many people over the age of 65 will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And as you can see, it's only growing. So it's these kind of statistics that we'll have to use to convince state governments to invest more in Alzheimer's care and research and funding, because it's a problem that is not going away unless we draw attention to it and the proper funding and research. So for those who want to know where exactly to get started, I always recommend, and this is my go-to, is the free database called Medline Plus. So I'll just bring that up for you here. It is a free database from the National Library of Medicine, the largest biomedical library in the world. And it has more than 10,000 health topics on it in a very consumer-friendly format. As you can see just alone here, it categorizes all the information just on Alzheimer's disease itself, from symptoms, diagnoses, to preventions, treatments, living with. I like to call this database a gateway database because what it basically consists of is links to other reliable websites based on what you're looking for. So if you want to know about symptoms, 10 early signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's, you have a link to the Alzheimer's Association. You want to know about how Alzheimer's disease is diagnosed, you go to the National Institute on Aging, and so on and so forth. All this is peer reviewed. Everything on here is very reliable and very informative when it comes to Alzheimer's. They have this is primarily where I got all the websites that I'm going to be talking about today. And they have PDF patient handouts for those of you who are part of educational institutions or wellness programs. And it even has on the side here, medical encyclopedia, as well as related health topics. So if you wanted a specific form of dementia that's not Alzheimer's, you just go to the dementia page and it lists all of the different dementias here. So everything is pretty much linked together. So I definitely use it when a patient or visitor comes in and asks me about a topic. This is the first place I go because it really takes away the time and effort you would need to search through all the Google results. Instead, you have it all in one database right here. So I like to call the Alzheimer's organizations that provide general information on Alzheimer's the big three. That's what I like to call them. First one is Alzheimer's Association. Where's the video we just watched was their facts and figures video. So if we just click on that, it takes us to the Alzheimer's Association page. This is what the homepage looks like. So you just go to Alzheimer's and dementia. You have all this important stuff. And I think there was a participant tonight who told me about a patient who was just diagnosed with early stage. So they go over the stages here, and I believe there is a section on people who are just diagnosed. So they even have one between the Alzheimer's and other dementia, approaching memory loss concerns, because a lot of people confuse the early signs of Alzheimer's with just typical memory loss associated with aging. Yep, so let's see. Yep, so this would be the page that you go to if you were just recently diagnosed. I have Alzheimer's, so they have the Get Educated section where you learn all about Alzheimer's and your diagnosis, and how to break the news to the family, essentially. We have a treatments and research page right here. As you can see, it's all like nicely laid out, and links to whatever you're looking for. Even medications are on here. And then we have a programs and support section right here. You can look for programs here, the 24/7 free helpline, engagement groups. It's just all very easy to navigate. And it even has an online community that you can start joining with other individuals living with early stage Alzheimer's, for instance. They even have a research section where they talk about what milestones have been met when it comes to Alzheimer's research. So you can be able to keep track of what's new in terms of treatment. And this is all stuff that you can bring to a doctor's appointment or with a neurologist that you're scheduled with, so that you can have a productive dialogue on what exact kind of treatment would be best for you. So that's the Alzheimer's Association page. Next, we're moving on to one of my favorites, which is the National Institute of Aging. Not only is their website pretty great, it's just as easy to navigate as the other one, and it has what's known as a DEAR, which is the Alzheimer's disease and related dementias page. They have a lot of great resources on the basics, the causes, symptoms, treatment, living with. This is the DEAR Center page, where they talk about how it's a service of the National Institute of Aging, where you can actually call in and ask for support, and they have free publications that can be sent to your home or whatever institution that you work for or volunteer at. And and it's actually one that I've stockpiled at my library. This is the one on caring for a person with Alzheimer's. This was very, very helpful for making my PowerPoint tonight, because it's got great resources in it. If you want something more specific and less of a book, they also have these pamphlets. This one's on a fact sheet for just Alzheimer's disease, and one that I went over very thoroughly was the legal and financial planning for people with Alzheimer's disease. So really, really helpful for me today, and hopefully for you. These are free to order, or you can ask me to give you one of mine. I have a ton in both English and Spanish. I'm happy to mail it to anyone, but it is very easy to order online as well. And then the last of the big three is the American Alzheimer's Foundation of America, excuse me. And that one, let's see, let's load. And here we go. It's one of those sites that just have everything, and it looks like it's complicated to navigate at first, but it actually has a lot of great features. So you can see right here, their big draw is a free virtual memory screening, which is really good for someone who may be thinking that they have Alzheimer's, and it's a good screening tool. And it might be helpful for someone whose family has a history of Alzheimer's disease and wants to know if they're potentially need to look into that. And so they do say specifically, they do have a disclaimer in here that says that this is not meant to be a diagnosis tool. You can basically that the results do not reflect if you actually have Alzheimer's or not, or some kind of dementia. So, but it's something that you can, that based on the results, you can bring to a neurologist or a doctor in order to see what steps you should take, or if there's something to be worried about. So that's definitely interesting. They also have a free health line, which to contact a social worker about services or learning what kind of care plan you need to make. They have a resource learning center on Alzheimer's disease and other dementia. And they have fact sheets, and they also have caregiver support groups. Primarily, they will meet online. It's on specific days for specific reasons or for specific people, for family members who lost one in a care setting, family interactions in a time of COVID. So you can definitely register through the helpline for those. And the last thing was an events calendar. So this was actually really interesting because they have a huge range of events, virtual events that they offer on this site, not just for caregivers, but for Alzheimer's patients or families that they can do together on the computer. And if that'll load, that'll be great. Okay, here we go. So just for the month of November, there's something for every single day of the week. They've got Tuesdays activity tips, for instance, celebrating Alzheimer's awareness or reminiscence activity. They had a bar fitness last week, ukulele sing-along, mindful meditation. So it's just the range of it is pretty astonishing. Let's see what they had today. They had an Educating America tour of Connecticut, another mindfulness meditation. They, for Thanksgiving, they're not taking a day off. They're doing a stretch and flex fitness. And it looks like when you click on here, it's not going to be on this website. You have to register, you have to go to their Facebook page in order to see the event. So that's definitely something worth looking into, especially considering COVID shutting down services that would have otherwise provided these. You can instead go through them virtually. So that's why I really wanted to recommend Alzheimer's Foundation of America, because I couldn't find any other website that really had such a huge range of activities for patients and their families and caregivers. So those are the big three. And just wanted to point out that on the Alzheimer's Association page, you can find a local chapter that's in your area. And the one for Connecticut looks like this. So you just go down. They did say that they will be remotely working, but normally if this was a normal year, they would have been doing events, walks, fundraisers, all that sort of stuff. But they do still have access to resources and community programs and services specifically for Connecticut. So this is what the page looks like here. And we'll be going over this a little bit later, but this is where you'd find all their programs and events, such as their support groups. If you just put down, for instance, 6830, that's our zip code. Yeah, so right now, the only one that's delivered is ALZ Connected. While there are some that are canceled right now, for obvious reasons. There are virtual caregiver support groups. Just basically you can filter in whether it's virtual, online, or by phone. So that's what the Connecticut chapter of the Alzheimer's Association provides. So we'll just move on to the next slide. So what's great about these websites, by the way, is that a lot of them connect to each other. So almost always there's going to be a other resources section in the websites that then they all like mention each other. So it's really hard to lose sight of any of those websites because they all refer to each other. So that's helpful. One of the websites that they all refer to is the National Health Organization's National Institute of Health. That's part of the Health and Human Services portion of the federal government. They have a ton, it's a branch term for all the national institutions, and all of them have their own subgroups. The one for Alzheimer's research info and clinical trials is the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. So we're just going to go to that. And they have a page that's focused specifically on Alzheimer's disease and the related dementias. They describe the statistics, they have links to all the dementias, and they even have the federal programs, because back during the Obama administration, they signed into law a lot of legislation that funds the national plan to address Alzheimer's disease. So you could definitely look into that to see where the US is at in terms of Alzheimer's research and the milestones they plan to achieve. And then they have a lot of great resources and tools, such as the Research Implementation Database, the Genetics Resource Center, the biomarkers. I wish I could go more in detail into this, but this site is really clinical. But there are information sources that are consumer friendly. So for instance, if we went to the All Disorders tab and we looked up Alzheimer's, they have a resource page right here that's put into categories like definition, treatment, clinical trials, and patient organizations. Like I just said, all these connect to each other. We just came from the Alzheimer's Association and the ADIR Center at the National Institute of Aging. And then we also have a link to the clinical trials page. So this is primarily how Alzheimer's disease gets researched. You have to, there are studies that are looking for volunteers that have Alzheimer's, and they're testing medication and treatments and such. So this is where you'd go if you like to volunteer a patient or yourself for a clinical trial. So this is where you'd find it on this page. And I think it would also be, there would be press releases here if you wanted to know specifically on press releases. Yeah, and then it would also be in here under current research, clinical research, where to describe exactly what they do in terms of clinical research. So that's what that website looks like. So when it comes to Alzheimer's medical and financial planning, there is so much to know about. That is why this legal financial planning pamphlet from the National Institute of Aging was so helpful. I'm referring to this as I'm presenting to you because it lays out the information so well. So on the medical side, those are the documents that you will be needing to complete, and they recommend highly that these should be completed whether you're the Alzheimer's patient or a relative of the Alzheimer's patient or a caregiver. These need to be completed with the Alzheimer's patient at the earliest stage possible, almost like immediately after they've been diagnosed, because as we all know, Alzheimer's is a progressive disease. It gets worse and worse as it goes on. So while the patient is cognizant, they should be able to fill out these medical documents and legal financial documents. So the first document is an advance directive, which basically tells healthcare providers that communicate the healthcare wishes of the person with Alzheimer's. These are what the healthcare providers will refer to when the patient is unable to speak for themselves. It has a lot of parts in it. primarily the most important one being the living will, which records a person's wishes for medical treatment near the end of their life. It can specify the extent of life-sustaining treatment, help a terminally ill person die with dignity, specify how much discretion the person gives to his or her proxy about end-of-life decisions. So that's primarily what the advance directive is for. It's for hospital care. Then you have the durable power of attorney for healthcare, which basically is a document that designates a person the authority to make healthcare decisions on behalf of the person with Alzheimer's. So once they are unable to speak for themselves, this person will basically have power over their healthcare. And then the last form for medical is the do not resuscitate order, which instructs healthcare professionals not to perform CPR in case of stopped heart or stopped breathing. So those are the medical forms that should be done as soon as possible. And then on the legal financial side, there should be a will that's made that indicates how a person's asset and estate will be distributed. There should be a durable power of attorney over finances. So it's designating a person, as opposed to for their health care, they're going to have the authority to make legal financial decisions on behalf of the person with Alzheimer's. And then last but not least, there should be a living trust filled out, which gives a designated person or trustee the authority to hold and distribute property and funds for the person with Alzheimer's. So this is what the National Institute of Aging recommends, that these are the must-have documents that should be completed. Now, these are very extensive and possibly difficult documents to fill out on your own. A lot of them require a lawyer, possibly, to help out with that. Some of the, and depending on some states, they need to be notarized as well. So if you need assistance with filling them out or knowing exactly what to provide in your state, they recommend the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. They specialize in elder care and laws regarding long-term elderly care. This is what the website looks like. And if you go to Consumer Resources, this is where you'll be able to find a lawyer. And I believe, yeah, so they confirm that I hate it when they make you do this stuff. Yep, so continue. So this is where you'd put in basically your state and be able to find an NAELA lawyer in your area. Or if you already know the name, you can put it in here. There are certain services that offer this kind of thing for free, and we can go over that when we talk about Connecticut specific services. And when you go to a place like that, they're usually called a geriatric care manager. They're basically trained social workers or nurses who can help people with Alzheimer's disease and their families. So they're not necessarily lawyers, but they're very familiar with the forms involved and how to fill them out. And on the Alzheimer's Association website, there was a legal and financial worksheet that I thought would be helpful for some people to have, because it can be very confusing having to organize and locate and find where these documents are. So this is kind of like an assets sheet that's divided into assets, income, so you'd be able to just organize all your documents. And then they have a space here just for the documents, some of the documents we talked about, like the will, the living will, the power of attorney for healthcare and property. So this is just very helpful for people like me. I really want to organize myself and know where everything is. So that's one way you could do that. Now we'll move on to just a quick side note, because when it comes to financing, elderly or senior citizens are very susceptible to scams or such problems such as identity theft. There was a section all about that in the book that I mentioned earlier. where they say that scams can take many forms, such as identity theft, get-rich-quick offers, phony offers of prizes, home or auto repairs, insurance scams, or threats. The two websites where you could go to for tips on how to avoid these scams or for even reporting them if they do happen to you is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They have a really great website just on tips for protecting older adults. This is a great PDF that you can order for free in both English and Spanish. Resources for the caregivers, consumer advisories for preventing fraud, resources for financial institutions, etc., etc. So fraud prevention resources they got here. You can just, these are printable flyers that you can, if you're a volunteer at a community or have community service such as a parish or a center, you can definitely, if you're not open to the public, you can definitely post these on a website or whatnot. But this is such a great resource just for being able to find tips on avoiding fraud or scams and whatnot. And then if it does happen, on that same website, you could report a complaint against an institution that tries to defraud an Alzheimer's patient. But there's also on USA.gov, you can find your state's consumer protection office. So for instance, if you go to Connecticut, it will take you directly to the website where you can file a complaint. So if we click here, it takes us to the Department of Consumer Protection for Connecticut. Okay, so with regards to all the services and medications and needing to pay for them, this is the PowerPoint slide for that, for financial assistance. There is a lot of confusion when it comes to that, and since I'm not well versed in that, I'm just going to go over the bare minimum. Everybody knows Medicare. It's a federally government health insurance program that pays some medical costs for people over 65 and older, not all of it, but this is the website where you can sign up for it. And in my opinion, the site isn't very helpful in telling you exactly how to use it, but they do have a handbook, Medicare and You. But I would highly recommend ordering this guide because it has a section all about government benefits and financial help from federal and state government programs. But you can definitely get this handbook because I thought it was really a help. I feel like this was the most helpful thing on this site, if I'm being honest, because otherwise it was only through this guidebook that I was able to find out that Medicare had been split into 3 parts. There's a Part A, a Part B, and a Part D. So for instance, Medicare Part A will cover costs through a deductible, short stays in a nursing home or hospice care. Medicare Part B will pay for some preventative services and the cost of some doctor services, and Medicare Part D will cover some medication costs for Alzheimer's. So that's but you can also, I think what they recommend is that you can call Medicare.gov specifically to see what exactly could be covered for Alzheimer's, because it does not cover everything when it comes to long-term care, unfortunately. And then I was going to go over Medicaid, but from what I was able to research, it's very different in each state. So that's going to be part of my CT specific resource page, because I'll just directly put you to where what Medicaid services are available for the state of Connecticut. And then there's a really great resource from the National Council of Aging called Benefits Checkup. I'll just take you to it. It is a program, a free program that helps you find financial assistance, veteran benefits, employment volunteer work, and helpful information resources. This is what it looks like. So if you click on Find My Benefits, or if you just go to home, actually, yeah. If you just go to home and you put in, for instance, 06830, get started. So it's not working on my computer right now, but it would basically show a list of resources of exactly what you're trying to find. So see here, if we go to Connecticut, and we can find resources on medication, healthcare, transportation. So for instance, if we just put in housing and utilities, for instance, for the state of Connecticut, can find that all these are what are available in Connecticut. They'll just give you a list of the benefits programs that are available. It's upsetting that I can't show you how that works, but if you put in, it basically asks for your information, such as are you married, what kind of income you make per year, and based on all that information, they find out what benefits you're eligible to apply for. Specifically, it can help you with the Medicaid option for Alzheimer's too. So we move on next to the slide for caregiver support. The first website that I really liked was Caregiver Action Network. So they have pretty easy to look through website. I would go directly to either the Connect tab, where they talk about the community that you can go through and be able to connect anonymously with other caregivers. And then I really like their toolbox because they have a ton of topics such as resources on advanced directives, 10 tips to help caregivers. They have the Elder Care Locator, which locates services for Alzheimer's and other conditions in your area. They have a lot, it's an all-encompassing thing, so it's for cancer, Alzheimer caregivers, etc. But they do have a section just for Alzheimer's. And yeah, coping with Alzheimer's. They have a video series actually for caregivers with caregiver Alzheimer's. And then what I really liked was this agencies and organizations box, which basically did a bulk of my job for me by organizing all these places. So you can see if you want a caregiver specific websites, they have a whole ton of ones here. They get very, very specific. For instance, if you're looking for disabled American veterans, for filing claims, they even have one for caring for elders, for end-of-life planning, training, respite resources. So just as specific as you can think, they're gonna have an agency organization listed here. So I primarily recommend this site just for that alone. And the next is the Family Caregiver Alliance, or the National Center on Caregiving. And by the way, all of these caregiver sites have information on Alzheimer's, just like general information like the big 3 websites did earlier. But yeah, there's definitely a focus on the caregiver on these sites. For instance, here, this is a center out of California, but they do have online support groups that you could apply for. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be from California to do it. They also have a research registry that connects caregivers to clinical trials. Let me just show you the support group, which is kind of similar to the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, where they have caregiver online support group that meets on certain days of the week. And then they have what's called a Family Care Navigator. And I do not know why they make it so small. It seems very counterproductive, but you can click on CT, for instance, and be able to find general information and assistance, services and policies for family caregivers. If you needed legal help, they have the Choices program, and this is all for Connecticut. So this is really helpful if you want to see Connecticut Association of Area Agencies, the Connecticut Elder Law website. So it just narrows down exactly what you're looking for in the state of Connecticut when it comes to Alzheimer's. So you can see there's a lot to look through. The Alzheimer's Respite Care Program, the Alzheimer's Resource Center of Center of Connecticut, etc. So just a lot to look through, and this is helpful for family members who are out of state as well, because they have a whole map out here. So I know that there are some Alzheimer's families who are spread out, and sometimes you need to know the services in one state as opposed to another. So this is a great resource to look into for that. And then last but not least, caring.com is really has the best of both worlds when it comes to both of these websites that came before, because it is a caregiving resource center. And what I really like about it is just how interestingly it's laid out. It's just kind of got a really nice aesthetic to it, and just has every kind of topic you could think of just piled neatly over here. So they have all the Medicare information, they have the products, they have senior fall prevention, just anything you can think of, they'll have it. And they even have a section on just Alzheimer's early symptoms. And then what I really liked about this website is that it actually had a section primarily just on caregiver burnout. It's really interesting to me that there were some websites that didn't even touch on that topic, but caregiver burnout is so huge when it comes to Alzheimer's, the Alzheimer's community. So it's that I really recommend this site just based on this fact alone, that they're providing something on caregiver burnout, because Alzheimer's disease is unfortunately one that does not just affect the patient, it affects everyone around them, the family, the caregiver, etc. So, and then they have a service. We mentioned geriatric care managers when we talked about medical and planning and finance. That tells you how to find geriatric care manager, for instance, in the state of Connecticut. Search here. And it's looks like they're still working on that. So they also have a hospice page where you can do the same thing, where you look up a hospice in your area. And then they have a lot of independent living, assisted living, and communities, adult daycare near you. But yeah, I would definitely I love how this is laid out and the amount of information they actually give. So this is definitely a site I'd recommend as well. So those are the caregiver support websites. We'll move on to home care and hospice. So the types of health care, or care in general, that are mentioned, I primarily got this again from the guide right here. They primarily place them in specific groups, such as health aides that you can actually bring to your home and have them take care of the Alzheimer's patient within the home. They send these home health care services, they send the aide to your home. These aides can provide care for a few hours or up to 24 hours. Some of the costs may differ for them, but that's depending on where you get them from. There's also a meal or transport services that some communities provide for free, others charge a small fee. There's also what's known as adult daycare, which is sort of like if you think about YMCA or like a community nursing home, that they sometimes provide a respite for caregivers if you just drop them off at the state care facility. They can provide transportation as well from the home to the facility and then back, but it's just a nice way to give an Alzheimer's patient something to do during the day and a break for the caregiver. And then, of course, when things have gotten progressively worse or the patient is near end of life, hospice is always an option, because they are care services that can be provided in the home or at a specific hospice facility that helps make it the end of life easier and comfortable for the patient. So the National Hospice and Palliative Care Association website is where you want to go to see what services are available and to research specifically on what hospice and palliative services are like. if you're not familiar with them. So they have both hospice care and palliative care, resources, education page, just education on exactly what hospice is. And then resources, hospice care. Yep, the history of hospice, hospice facts and figures, FAQs, how Medicare can help alleviate some of the cost of hospice. Finding a care provider is also available. They have like this search option here. And there was also a section here that gave you a, so education, hospice care, quality. There was a section in here that also provided a downloadable advanced directive for Connecticut, but I have a copy of that in the PowerPoint, so I'll just show you that. And then what I mentioned, this is what I mentioned earlier with the Alzheimer's Association. This is called the Community Resources Finder. It includes programs, support groups, medical services, and more. So when we talked about the Connecticut chapter, I briefly showed this. So here you can find care at home. We talked about adult K care. So if you put it here and type in 06830, you can find what's located near your area when it comes to adult daycare services. If you're looking for community services, such as Area Agency on Aging, or elder law attorneys, geriatric care managers, or transportation, 6830, same thing. It just brings it up immediately, the website and where they're located, and so on. The closest will obviously be at the top, and you can always filter it in through here to narrow down the results that you're looking for. They even have medical services such as neurologists, home health care, hospices, and geriatricians near you. So just very extensive, very helpful, very easy to use. So when we talked about scams and fraud avoidance earlier, same thing. When it comes to picking out services for the home or out of home, it's very important to evaluate them ahead of time to see which one works for you. So we have Medicare.com's Home Health Compare website. So once you use the Community Resource Finder and find a home hospice or healthcare facility near you, you can actually look it up, put in the name of it, and be able to see what the rating is, how reliable they are, and how good their services are. You can also look at the Better Business Bureau website that also compares businesses such as hospices or home health care facilities. And you can also put in a rating for yourself. And then the National Hospice and Palliative Care Association, the website that I just showed you, they even provide a checklist for evaluating a hospice and choosing one. So they have questions to ask when you're actually going to a hospice. You ask what services are provided, what sort of support, home, and where does hospice provide short-term inpatient care. It's very helpful for first-time people who don't know how exactly to choose a hospice or a healthcare facility. Okay, so I see that I'm running out of time, so that's why I'm kind of going quickly. I apologize. So, state-specific resources for Connecticut. My go-to would be the Connecticut Department of Health website. And within that website, they have what's called the Department of Aging and Disability Services. This is what it looks like. So this is where you would go for applying for services, whether it be through Medicaid, through Medicare, that could be covered, and there are also free community programs that you'd be able to sign up for. It's through the Department of Aging and Disability Services. We also have an advanced directive for Connecticut State. This is what I got from the National Hospice and Palliative Care Association. This is a advance directive that you can fill out, download as a PDF and fill out just right here. Talks about the living will aspect of it, and it starts here. So you fill it out right here, all the information, so you don't even have to print it out. You just, and then have it notarized, looked over by a lawyer, etc. And every advance directive can be different for each state. So people should avoid Googling these forms and just use this one right here. So when it comes to looking for community services and support groups and everything, all the websites recommend you find your state's Agency on Aging. So this is the closest Agency on Aging for Connecticut, specifically in southwestern Connecticut. So this is what it looks like. So they have a lot of information on COVID-19, for health insurance and Medicare, for all the support groups that you could think about. They even have a section on legal services, elder abuse, hospice, geriatric assessment. And then they have state programs for disabilities, caregiver resources and support groups, and adult daycare services, again, for the state of Connecticut. On the same Connecticut government website, on a health department website, they have all the information. This is what I meant when I said I couldn't talk about Medicaid earlier in general, because it's different for every state. This is Connecticut's Medicaid program, the Husky Health for Connecticut children and adults. So this is the site you'd go for to go over the Medicaid coverage. And so they have one specifically for long-term care Medicaid. So this is where you'd have the application referral for it. It even tells you exactly what sort of incomes they cover. Then they have the long-term care website on this. It's on the same website. Sorry about that. Bring that up again. So they have the related resources, the Alzheimer's Respite Care Program that you can apply for to relieve stressed caregivers by providing support, development of appropriate plan of care, services for an individual with Alzheimer's disease. They have the National Family Caregiver Support Program, the Connecticut Home Care for Elders program. These are programs that you need to apply for, of course. And then what's good is that they have an overview of the Medicaid waiver programs, so that you're able to know, you can look through these and see exactly what people are eligible for. And then we have Connecticut's long-term care website, which is called My Place CT, which I also linked in the PowerPoint, but they have a lot of great resources here on services for in-home care, housing, how to get transportation, meals and groceries delivered, end-of-life planning, sources for family caregivers, so look for respite services near you. So as you can see, everything that's coming up is what we're talking about. So like I said, everything's all linked in, so that's helpful. And then even has legal rights again, Medicare and Medicaid, planning for the future, applications. And then I think they also had, yes, so they have a COVID-19 page as well. Since I'm on here, I'll just show you what it looks like. It has tips for protecting your home, getting meals, resources, safeguarding people in nursing homes, prioritizing mental health during COVID-19. So this site definitely helps if you're confused on what to do during COVID-19 for an Alzheimer's patient. Yep, so we just went over My Place Connecticut Service and Support page, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Greenwich Hospital does have a Center for Healthy Aging. So the contact number is right here, and they do talk about how that they do have comprehensive aging assessments, psychiatry service, and they do offer free caregiver support groups. So this is all on the Greenwich Hospital website. So this is where you'd call for information about that. So that's what local Greenwich people who are close to Greenwich Hospital can look into. And then for COVID-19 and Alzheimer's disease, these are the three websites. This is another big three, I guess you could call it. CDC is where you could get general information on COVID. They have a section specific to the elderly population. National Alliance for Caregiving has great COVID-19 resources, and so does AARP. I wish I could show you AARP, but right now it's just not connecting to the website, so I'll just have the link up here. And then, like I mentioned earlier, My Place CT, I just showed you the page on COVID-19. So with just 1 minute left till 7, that concludes the webinar. I know I went through it kind of fast, but considering how many resources I had to look through for this presentation, I think this is a pretty good list to start with. So my contact information. There's my phone number for my office. I have my email right there if you can reach out to me. I am open to both virtual or in-person appointments from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Right now, the medical library is closed to visitors who don't have and the only way you can get in is to have an appointment with me. My hours from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And I did say that I have a website where I'm going to post this webinar and other ones that people didn't make it to. This is what it looks like. This is Dr. Stephen Mickley Community Health Resource section. There's me. And if you go to the, I think it's because I'm using Internet Explorer. Give me 1 second. I'm just gonna pull it up on a different browser. So this is where you'd go to, you can look for programs, you can schedule an appointment with me, and you can get all sorts of information on a variety of health topics. This is another gateway website, kind of like Medline Plus, but one that I have managed, and I put up links and do updates all the time. There's going to be a separate tab right down here that's going to be called Webinar Recordings. So that's where I'm going to post tonight's webinar and all the other webinars I've been doing for the last few months. I know it's kind of a long name, but if you type this directly into Google, it's going to be the first result. Or you can just click on this in the handout that I gave you. So there's going to be more, there's going to be 2 more upcoming webinars. I shouldn't have clicked out of there. I could have shown you it. So if we go to programs here, you can see that tonight we had the Alzheimer's disease resource page, but I have 2 upcoming programs in December, one on how to make smarter resolutions, and then how to prevent falls, reliable resources. So I know home safety is a really big deal when it comes to Alzheimer's, but of course, as you can see, I had a lot to cover, so I didn't have time. So that's why I'm making a separate webinar on preventing falls. It doesn't have to be just for Alzheimer's patients, it's just for resources for the elderly in general. So that's going to be in December. So please register for that and more at this website or call this number to register over the phone. So I can feel my voice going. I'm pretty much all done with talking. So I know it was a lot to cover, so if there's any questions, this is the time to do it. So let's see, there's the chat. Do you have any info on good local, including hospital support groups? Okay, so I don't know if Gary left. He also said thank you for providing contact info. I'm sure I'll be reaching out. Gary, if you're still here, I did mention the, let me go back to that. This is all the state-specific resources for Connecticut. So this is where you would go for information on the good local hospital support groups. So like I said, for the Center for Healthy Aging, this is the number to contact because they do have support groups in the hospital. But they also have, if we go to the My Place CT Services and Support page, we can look for, let's see, for family caregivers, it should be under there. Support groups. And if you go to Alzheimer's support groups, it'll say find a local support group. So this is for Connecticut specifically. It's going to be hard to find an in-person one most likely because it's, well, with COVID and everything, it's most likely going to be online. So let's just see what they come up with. I don't really like how this looks. So, you know what, I'm just gonna go to the, I think what's easier is if we go to this Community Resource Finder page, because I think it's just way simpler. So Community Services, there's the support group page. Do that. Here, 6830. All right, so like I said earlier, the ALZ Connected would be the best one to do for the social network community that's delivered online. We could put in Greenwich. Let's see what comes up. But I would definitely state of Connecticut, obviously. Yeah, so you can see, unfortunately, a lot of the support groups are not exactly local, or they'll be online. So definitely check those. But yeah, if you're looking for something local like the hospital, the Center for Healthy Aging is where I would give a call to. Yep, so I'm totally okay with just meeting individually, either by Zoom or by phone or by email to discuss this. So let's see, are there any other questions for tonight? I know this was a lot, so if it can be hard to think of questions right now with so much information thrown at you, so I totally understand that. But it's a process. So I wish, I don't wish Alzheimer's on anyone. I really wish that there would be a cure out by now, or that there wouldn't be. Yeah, you're welcome, Carolyn. I'm really grateful that there are resources like this out there, because if I was in that situation, I would just be completely devastated and not know where to turn. So I was just surprised at how, even when I was doing this own research, I was overwhelmed at how much there was out there. And I know it can be overwhelming for other people. So I gave the briefest overview I could of what I found. Some websites just seemed like really hard to navigate, so I tried to find the ones that were easier to navigate, who had the most helpful research in there. And I've been told that the Alzheimer's services in the area are not great, especially in Greenwich. I think Carolyn mentioned that to me. And I'm just curious what exactly that means, because I'm not familiar with all the services, and perhaps the ones that were listed on the website need to be evaluated better. So it's definitely worth talking about. I'm hoping to lead a discussion on that at some point. I don't know if you could comment on that, Carolyn, for everybody. Because I think sometimes the Connecticut State Department, Health Department is hard to navigate sometimes, but when it comes to Connecticut, it seems like they do have a lot of services. They're all just online, or you can't really visit the offices, but they do have a lot of programs that you can apply for. They do have hospice and home care facilities listed, so I'm interested to know. ALZ lists an OG support that was canceled 2 years ago. Okay, so that just might be a case of people not updating their websites, which I'm also guilty of sometimes myself, because website management is not my forte. So that's why it's been taking me so long to get those videos up already, but I will get those up as soon as I can. So yeah, it's a matter of doing your own research, and I had hoped by doing this presentation I can limit the amount of research you have to do by just providing you direct links to these organizations. Sometimes it's a matter of process of elimination. So just finding exactly what you need, but this is a good, I think, foundation for your research for Alzheimer's care services. And I'll just bring up my contact information for everyone just so you can get my email down. So any other questions? Sorry about that. Still have all the participants here, right? Yeah. So Mary Lou, Gary, Carolyn. If there are no more questions, thank you so much for joining me tonight. This was one of the most intense webinars I've had to prepare for, because I really wanted to make sure I gave enough information but not too much, because there's already a lot out there. But I'm so grateful that I could have attendees, and that I hope that I helped out in some way. And please refer this webinar to community members or neighbors or relatives that you know may be suffering from Alzheimer's and need some help. So with that, I think I'm going to end for tonight. So I have a webinar in December, 2 webinars in December, like I said, so please feel free to register for that. And I may be going over this again next year. I'm taking a little bit of a break from webinars at the beginning of next year, but I may revisit this topic next year as well. So anyway, thank you so much for attending, and have a good night.